Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Before we get into NFL talk, let's go ahead and get into an update from you, Coach. How has practice been going?
Overall, practice has been going pretty good. Very excited with what we have been able to accomplish so far. I was a little bit worried going in with having lower numbers in the summer that there was going to be a lot of gaps in the teaching learning curve, but the kids are getting back into the swing of things pretty quick, and I'm actually really happy with how quickly they're getting back into the swing of things.
Very cool. Do you guys have a scrimmage this week, or does that start next week?
Yep, we scrimmage on this coming Saturday. We'll be scrimmaging at Portage. So
yeah, go on out. For those that are listening in the area, go down and watch a team take on Portage. You guys did a 7-on-7 with them, right? How did that go?
Went well. We've did some things very well in the 7-on-7 season, but it's a lot different when you get the pads on. So hopefully we can continue that success.
You didn't sound very confident there. I'm gonna have to be worried about this Saturday now.
I always worry about the scrimmage. I'm always worried about people getting hurt and things I can't control.
I know. I see all these people get hurt at practice in the NFL, and I'm like, man, that's someone's life. They're just down. What was it with Zach Wilson? He hurt his meniscus, and I had that same injury, dude, playing baseball. And then they're like, whoa. When I went in there, they were like, yeah, it wasn't as bad. They were just scar tissue. So I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe I'll have a full recovery, but my knees still get stiff. And then they're like, oh, his is worse than what we thought. And I'm like, oh, man, I feel so bad for him. Because I was able to recover in time for football. The worst part was I missed heat acclimation, maybe. Like I missed the conditioning week. And I remember like being dead. Like it took me a while to get caught up for the regular season after that. And I'm like, I don't think it was really the surgery type stuff. It was just because like you didn't have that, and then you didn't have the conditioning. So I know the pain of that. I mean, I had my senior year, my junior year, we're supposed to have a good team, and our starting running back got hurt. Like the first game, like one of the first series. I remember he was on defense help force a fumble or something. And I remember looking back to celebrate with him after he picked it up. And he's like laying in the middle of the field, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So never want to see guys get injured.
And the big thing with small high school football is that you're always one or two injuries away from having your season completely flipped on its head. So if you can keep one of the secrets is keeping your health. You know, if you have the same group of kids week 1 to week 10, you stand a chance of having a pretty good year, because if other teams suffer some injuries with small schools, you know, it's real quick that you can gain an edge on somebody and keep that momentum.
It's not even just high school; it's in the NFL. I've been saying that year after year. It feels like with Ben Roethlisberger, it's like, no, the guy by the end of the year, he's definitely hurting. He's not the same guy. Like, he's taking too many hits. He should just basically take half the year off. I feel the same way with Russell Wilson. I know we're going to start talking about some quarterback battles and stuff like that, but I feel the same way with some of these older guys. Even Tom Brady, he's like, people are making a big deal about him missing preseason and stuff. It's like, buddy, he shouldn't show up until the midway point. like you want to keep him healthy. Some of the other older guys, like Gronk, it's like, hey, Gronk's going to retire. I think he realizes, like, I don't need to get beat up, because then you're not going to come back in time for the playoffs. And then if you do show up later, who cares as long as you're scoring a Super Bowl touchdown? I think college is the same way. You have a couple guys get hurt, and then the depth's not there. But you guys also have a new football stadium project underway that got funded last week. How excited are you about that?
You have no idea how happy I am that finally got approved. It's been something that's been in the works now so it's been talked about since before the pandemic. And then just on and off with COVID, there were issues and leases and permits and all kinds of tape that the administration was working with the township on getting all the appropriate permits in place. And it was just like, I felt like we were in a sprint to start with, because they took out our old bleachers really fast. And I thought, wow, this is going to be flipped immediately. And we just hit one wall after another, and finally we got everything approved. So I'm really excited because I think when they finally do finish everything, it's going to be a really, really nice stadium.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did feel like we talked about it before, and I had thought that it was already approved. So stinks when things like that get delayed because you never know when the funding will actually show up. Or hell, even if it gets approved, it could always be amended and then abandoned.
Oh, absolutely. And there was a lot of, I feel like there's constantly changes of things that you hear. This was going to be there and that's going to be there. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a dome before it's all said and done.
You'll end up with little Tykes bleachers. And they'll be like, we had to put this in the end zone. That's the kids section. We ran out of funding.
It'll be like Spinal Tap.
We got a hell of a deal. They still let them sit at the Toys R Us down the road. That's what you'll need. You'll be like, oh my god!
You said you submitted the goalpost in inches, not feet.
You'll get a tent for your dome, a dome for ants. Oh man, that's why I'm surprised still with like schools getting cut. Like having a good football stadium's nice, but like what else does it get used for? So, like, I always wonder, like, if the schools start to merge teams, like, what happens to some of these fields? I mean, I guess if it doubles as, like, a soccer field and stuff, is it going to be split from the baseball field now?
Well, they're going to, from what my recent understanding is that they're still going to have the baseball field and football field be played in a similar spot, but they're going to adjust how, like, the positioning of the baseball field so that, like, the infield isn't interfering with the football field.
Yeah, you can just imagine, like, what was that, the 49ers old stadium?
Candlestick.
Didn't Miami have one like that too? Maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
The Raiders did in Oakland.
Oh, California was their budget cuts. They had the dual purpose. I thought the one, was it in... What Canada team? I thought one of the Major League Baseball teams had one like that. That was like baseball and something else, but I guess there's not really an NFL team up there, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe
Could
it was
be a
used
Canadian
for the CFL.
team.
Huh?
Could be of use for a Canadian team.
Yeah, I thought like one of the domes up there, was it like Montreal or something, or Toronto? I thought like they had like a multi-purpose one. Maybe they shared it with the CFL, but I could be misremembering. Who knows? I know they had the AstroTurf stuff that always like sucked, and watching the Braves play them, like I always hated it. But anything else you have for your team before we get into the NFL stuff?
No, just we have positive vibes going. Hopefully they keep going.
And since I mentioned random baseball stuff, give a shout out to my Braves real quick, man. A 7-game winning streak, maybe 8 tonight over the Mets. Playoff chances are now 99.7 according to ESPN, which you know they lie, so probably worse than that. But definitely a good feel going on. And they still have a series with the Pirates left, which you know is always a good one to get a couple extra wins in. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know how the extra playoffs is going to be, because this could be one of the years where the Braves get screwed being in a tough division if they reward division winners. I don't know how the playoffs are going to be set up. I'd imagine they're going to do division winners, right? Because the Cards right now would be the other team.
Yeah.
But they only have a 79% playoff chance. Because I would guess it's either them or the Brewers. So whoever wins that, they're not going to have another team come from that division probably. But that's my little baseball tidbit. Those trades are definitely paying off so far for like 1 week. Let's get into the NFL. Some of the things. First off, let's start with the Panthers, because like I talked about quarterback battles a little bit ago, and like you're not really seeing some of the starters play, but like Baker Mayfield comes out and not too bad. You know, the Sam Darnold throws a touchdown, whatever. I think there's going to be a good battle there. I really think the reason I brought it up was I think the Browns are going to regret getting rid of Baker Mayfield. And I've been saying it for a while. But the longer the Deshaun Watson thing goes on, where they're like, now it might only be 10 games, but he has to pay $10 million. Now he's not allowed to have a massage from anyone other than the official Browns masseuse, and no weird sexual requests. And then, like, they gave him like these very specific list of demands that I was reading, and I'm like,
you can only eat at a TGI Friday.
How is the
Wednesday.
thing here? What does the masseuse look like then if it's non-sexual contact? Like, I wonder, like, what's going to happen? Like, what is going to be the process here? But I mean, he looked rusty, right? So you look at Baker, he looks like he's played.
That doesn't surprise me, because he had to sit out all of last year while he was under investigation for all this stuff. So I mean, that was part of the gamble. That how do you trade away knowing that you still have a year in? And we talked about this during the pandemic play, that you're not going to get the same amount of conditioning, even during those shortened months in between, let alone being out a full year. Like, they'll tell you he was like keeping up with his personal trainer and, you know, maintaining that high level that he needs for the NFL.
So going with that, it's like, what are you doing? 10 games even? Your team could be like already eliminated from the playoffs. I know they have the expanded season or whatever, but I'm looking at it and I'm wondering, like, you're taking a shot on a guy that might take him a few games to even warm up. And this year is pretty much a lost cause no matter what happens. If he doesn't play at all this season, is he going to come out even rustier next year or even worse? I wonder, like, in a couple of years, Browns fans are going to look back on it and say, we had a good thing going with Baker. Why did we blow it up? For, like, this unknown that hasn't played? Like, it's not like Tom Brady said, hey, you know what, I want to be a Brown. And I would be like, oh my God, that's awesome. Yeah, for sure we'll get rid of Baker. Like, the 49ers didn't do that for some reason. And Trey Lance, did you see the hype that the NFL put out for Trey Lance?
I didn't see that, but I did see an article that basically they said when the 49ers paid Jimmy Garoppolo, he just quit talking to everyone at the 49ers. Like, every offseason, guys would try to get in contact and be like, hey, let's get together. Just like,
yeah, but where did you read that? From the 49ers newspapers? I have zero trust in the 49ers after I saw the slander they threw out at Jim Harbaugh. They're like, Jim Harbaugh is a complete weirdo. Jim Harbaugh will never last more than 4 years anywhere. And now he's like at Michigan past 4 years, just won. And it's like, all right, well, how much of that was lies? Because, like, he didn't hear any of that crap at Stanford. You didn't hear any of that crap at Michigan. You only heard it from the 49ers. And York was like leaking it to the press, and it kind of that's what they were accusing them of, was like, the 49ers are sabotaging this. So, like, the fact that they need to get Garoppolo off the books, otherwise, I think, is it September 1? Like, they have to do something with him, otherwise his money's guaranteed. So are they just going to guarantee him more money and then just keep talking trash on him, which is going to what? It's a total Browns move, right? You're going to blow the locker room up, and then if Lance goes down or something happens and you already kind of fractured the locker room on Garoppolo, like, I almost wonder if it's, you get a guy like Shanahan comes in, gets his culture in place, right? They go to the Super Bowl, they lose. Very similar to what Harbaugh did there. And then the ownership starts meddling with the locker room. And then things start to fall apart. And then everyone's kind of like, well, yeah, coach really lost a locker room. But I'm like, would he really have lost a locker room if things weren't being leaked to the press? Right? I mean, we all know from the Adam Schefter and the, what was the Redskins guy?
Dan Snyder?
No, the manager. He had a different name. But it wasn't Snyder, was it? I don't know who Schefter was emailing. But, like, we all know from those email releases that the owners and whatever, the GMs, basically tell the media what to write. And then the reporter checks back in and is like, hey, is this safe to write? And so you're not getting any groundbreaking news. If someone's talking about Garoppolo, they're either trying to drive down the price of him, or the 49ers are trying to get more people to buy in on Lance. But the hype that I was talking about is I get a barrage of messages and, like, alerts on my phone. It's like, watch Trey Lance throw a 76-yard bomb touchdown pass. And I'm like, yeah, I'll watch that, you know. It's like a 20-yard pass. The guy ran for like 50 yards. I'm like, that's not a 76-yard bomb, you idiots. Who wrote this? And it wasn't just them. The ESPN had the same headline, like massive bomb by Trey Lance. And I'm like, guys, I've seen massive bombs. This is just a regular pass of broken coverage. Like, I've seen that in college football every Saturday. That happens at least 5 times. Like, you're telling me that that's a big time thing. If he threw a bomb, awesome, hype it up. But like, that's the kind of thing that the 49ers are so hyping him up for whatever reason that regular fans are going to see that and they're just going to be disappointed, I think. Not wishing ill will on the guy. I think Love had a longer touchdown pass in the air. I think they caught it in the end zone for one of the Packers ones. And I'm like, what's the difference here? Is it because Love's not the starter, so they're not hyping him up? But I'm getting all these Trey Lance updates that are showing me. And I'm like, maybe I'm misremembering it, but that wasn't like an impressive pass. So that's what I want. The NFL, some of their alerts are turning into such garbage that I'm like, just take me off. If I wanted this stuff on social media, like I would just, like, if I want to clickbait, that's what this is becoming. Social media, like I signed into Southbound Sports. Twitter, I haven't been on there in a while. And Twitter's now just showing me recommendations from other people that I don't follow. Like the entire timeline's like a bunch of political stuff. And I'm like, I come on here to check the sports, guys. I can't like just turn it off. Like I understand, like I'm like, who would use Twitter anymore? If you can't even navigate the feed. Like the whole purpose of it was you just got news from people that you followed. Not friends of their friends. Everyone has a bunch of idiots they follow. So that's my little beef I have. Did you try the NFL Plus?
Negative.
So I was like, hey, I wonder what the NFL Plus is, right? They're doing the free games to try to get you to pay the $5 or whatever for all the preseason games because there's only 3 weeks of preseason. So if you pay for NFL Plus, I think it was like $5 a month and $30 for the year. So I'm like, all right, this can't be that bad, right? I click in. First 2 games that I click on are both blacked out. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I saved myself $5 by not paying for this firsthand, right? So I'm like, why are these blacked out? They're only on the NFL Plus. Where else would I be seeing them? I guess local television maybe. But I checked and they weren't on. And so which game did come on? Was it the Chiefs? I think it was the Chiefs because I think Mahomes was in there. So I started watching it. Crashing. The app crashed and froze at least 10, 12 times.
Oh, I'm shocked.
And I'm like, people are paying for this. I know that they're like, well, it's only $5 and you get the preseason games. I'm like, just outsource it to Amazon. Like, what's Amazon's cut? 30%? Like, at least it would work. And I could watch all the games and I already have like the Amazon whatever Prime. So to me, it'd be beneficial. But I don't understand what the NFL's like. They have to do the infrastructure. So they're spending money to stream the games on their own platform. And it's not good. So what's going to happen is I think you're going to see it get cut. And you're going to just end up in a cycle of like, hey, you should watch our games. Oh, well, streaming doesn't work. That's what the NFL is going to say. They're going to come back and say like, well, doesn't work. When I think they should look and see what the Big Ten's doing. And we'll check in on this later. But the Big Ten started it by doing their own network. But they gave the main stake to Fox. And they said like, you guys are going to stream it. You guys are going to do it as part of the contract or whatever. And sure, the app changes or whatever. But the Big Ten's not like, hey, yo, we're going to be the ones that stream the game. The ACC, when they did their network, ESPN had them, every school like install their own streaming infrastructure, and it took forever for it to even get started. Like almost a decade after the Big Ten and other conferences, right? They're like the last ones because the ACC is like, yeah, we really don't want to invest in you. That's kind of what the NFL is doing to themselves. They're like, you know what? We'll do it ourselves here in a worse way. And then I'm like, man, I watched Major League Baseball TV, NHL TV in the past, NBA TV, and so far the NFL's version of it is the worst out of all of them. So that's my little check in there. I hope you didn't pay for it because it couldn't be. I mean, this is on a Roku, and I've had no issues from any other apps. Even the horrendously buggy Apple TV app, when it first came out, didn't even crash as much as the NFL one did. The NFL app, come to think of it, is probably the only app that's ever really crashed a bunch of times for me. So, sad day for football fans. What games did you end up watching? Did you have time to watch any?
I purposefully made a point to watch in its entirety the Steelers game.
What did you think?
They're not going to suck as bad as everyone seems to think that they will.
Well, not so fast, Matt. It's only week 1 of the preseason.
We have 3 quarterbacks that didn't look like runny dog shit.
I'm just going to remind you again, it's the preseason. Which is your favorite quarterback?
I'll be honest, I like Trubisky.
Oh my God, that's the one I hate the most.
Of course.
Why? Why do you like him?
I thought and without knowing the ins and outs of Canada's offense, I thought when you looked at the way he was playing, he was getting the ball out on time. And he had some rollouts and some different things where he was outside the pocket, but I didn't see where he was forcing the ball in to receivers, and they moved the ball well. They scored. They did all the things that they needed to do to have him maintain control of the offense. Like I'm not looking for somebody to come in and do what Ben Roethlisberger did for the last however many seasons. I think you have Najee Harris. You need to feed him the ball. I joked in our fantasy group chat about Pickens. I think he's gonna make everybody forget about Juju in a hurry, catching the ball, knocking corners over, trash talking. Like he's everything that I hoped he was going to be in his first rookie game.
Well, hey, Juju, they showed him warming up in that Chiefs game. They said he's going to be a star with Kansas City, Matt. So who do you think has a better year?
TikTok?
Who do you think has a better year?
Oh, Pickens.
All right, on the record, you heard it. Better than Juju with the Chiefs. A higher-powered offense and a better quarterback, Matt. Just think of what you're saying.
Yeah, but is he going to be healthy enough to do it? Be fumbling?
He's always been fumbling. That's my beef with him.
He'll be pulling a McCaffrey, and then he'll just be TikToking. Like, hey, I'm with the Chiefs right now.
Well, it was the halftime, or no, it might have been before that Panthers game came on. They showed McCaffrey warming up, and they're like, don't worry, this is the only action he's going to see on the field. And he was like doing like a jog, and I thought, get off my screen. How embarrassing.
Get him off the field before he gets hurt.
And then ESPN put an article out, and it was like, hey, don't draft these overrated running backs. And it was like Ezekiel Elliott and someone else. And I'm like, McCaffrey? Where's McCaffrey? And then you read in like the fine print, it was like, hey, our number one guy we want you to avoid. He was the only person that was more overrated than him is Christian McCaffrey. But McCaffrey, he could be good if he didn't get hurt. I'm like, he's always hurt. You even said right here, McCaffrey's the number one overrated, yet you didn't even include him in your article. You didn't include him. Why? Why are you hyping him up at this point? He's only getting older. And other news, my boy Derrick Henry, did you see him cracking helmets? They have the stiff arm drill, and he's busting the helmets with his hand, and I was like, oh my God, man, if they would have let you come back from that injury last year, we could have had such a successful postseason together. So maybe this year, this will be my, what was that? David Johnson jumping out of the pool video. He never really came back from that, but Derrick Henry's wasn't really a bad injury. I don't know how old he is, but he's a different type of back. We'll see. We will see who has the better year. But if I'm taking a pick between Henry and McCaffrey, I'm picking Henry. That'll probably be my keeper. I haven't decided. It's either him or none. But I have him for fairly low. I got to see what the values are, because sometimes the auto bettors will randomly crank up a value out of some guy that I don't want. So,
and I tip my cap that there's a lot of seasons that you go in as with no keepers.
Me?
Yeah,
I know. And then I end up trying to get him. Like last year, I didn't have a keeper, and I ended up getting McCaffrey for cheaper, so it worked out. But that's normally what I look at. I like a lot of them just get older. Like sometimes you get locked in with a younger guy for very cheap because you hit on him big, and then of course it makes sense to keep him. But I haven't been that lucky. Normally, I'll know that someone's going to be good, so I'm willing to bid a little bit more. People might drive it up. I've never got lucky to get like a good guy for $1. Someone always bids me up because they're jerks out there. I couldn't even get a defense or a kicker. People are like bidding them up. I'm like, good, take them. If you want to waste a couple of dollars to take my defense or my kicker, I don't care. I'll pick one up in free agents that will be way better than whatever. I looked at the year last year, and I had those 5 injuries in the playoffs. Man, I even won a playoff game, a miracle. But I was so close to winning another championship with the half injured roster. I have to pour one out next time I look back on that season. Could have been something special. Maybe this year will be the year. We'll see. We'll keep you posted. Maybe we'll do fantasy stuff next week. I got to even lock in our draft. Probably do that tomorrow. So we'll check back in on that. Do you have anything else for the NFL? No. I didn't even change it on the big board here.
No.
I was going to say the last thing was like the Garoppolo stuff. There's talk of like him being moved, and if the value keeps being driven down, like if the Browns end up with him, I'm going to be so disappointed because the Browns are a mess. They don't need to be bailed out because the 49ers ownership doesn't know what they're doing either. Don't do that. Don't do that. So I'll be keeping an eye on some other quarterback battles this week. I know we talked about doing some last week, what to look at. Before I get into that, ESPN had some breaking news this afternoon that Zach Wilson's knee surgery was a success. No surprises. I guess it wasn't tore as deep as what they thought it might be. I don't know how many people get these injuries and like kind of look at them, but I always wondered like, what's it going to be? Like, who's going to say that you can't play? Because Michigan had that one guy the one year. I can't remember his name now, but he's in the NFL. And the Michigan doctor said, like, no, you can't play. So he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go to Minnesota then and see if I can get cleared there. And he did get cleared. Then he got drafted and he got cleared by the NFL. It's like, all right, well, what did the Michigan guy see then? What the hell? We were down cornerbacks that one year. We needed him. And so, like, if it's an actual injury, though, could you imagine getting the wrong diagnosis? Like, yeah, it's really bad there. We might have to, like, just start popping some things in there. Because if it's cut too deep, I think they have to. I don't even know if they sew it back together or what they would do. But that would be way worse than just scoping it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, scoping it when he gets older, because that's what they thought they were going to have to do with May. I guess it can keep getting worn down. So you could either injure it again, is what they told me, or when you get older, it would just wear out, so you'd have like an arthritic knee. No one really talks about that stuff in the NFL, though. It's like, hey, he'll be back. He'll be fine. And then you see these guys like selling chairs that go up the stairs for you automatically. Like those old the Steeler commercials. Do you remember those? Like infomercials late at night. I forget what the hell the chair was called. Was it Franco Harris? I don't even remember. Rocky Blyer. Someone was selling like the chairs like, hey, I can't walk up the stairs no more. But here I go on my little chair, and it would go right up the stairs. And I was like, always wondered, like, do people actually have those in their house? Because I've never seen one. I know a lot of old people, right? So I wondered how successful that campaign was for them. I should find it and tweet it out. I'll see if I can do that. But that means Joe Flacco might be back, man. He might be poised to start for the Jets, right? So major comeback story. He's only 37. Him.
He's not 50.
Him, Russell Wilson. Like, let's see, new teams, new looks. What's going to happen? What else? I thought I was going to talk about something else, but now I can't remember. Preseason big week 2 games. So the preseason, let me make sure I have the right schedule up here. If you want to kind of see how to gauge the Steelers coming up this week, they're playing the Jags. The Jags are 0-2. They kind of look awful. I think the Steelers are going to come out and dominate again. Like, they didn't really dominate last week, but go out, get a win, show me what you need to do. And I also want to see how some of these other quarterbacks come. Because, like, Atlanta, they had Ritter come in, and he played fairly well at the end of the game. I think he got the game-winning touchdown, right? So, like,
yeah,
what's going to be their start to the season? That's what I want to see from some of these other teams, and have some other teams just get a real shot. So we'll be checking back in next week. Another one that you might want to watch is that Panthers-Patriots game. Who's going to get the majority of the snaps? Is it going to be Baker? Is he going to be the starter? Or is Sam Darnold going to win it back? That's the one I'm watching, you know. So we'll come back next week with that. College football, just some random stuff. The preseason polls came out today. And I also had, let me see if I can find it, because I wanted to go through these with you. The gambling win-loss for each team, right? So here we go. The preseason polls, you had the coaches poll and the AP poll. Let me see. I think ESPN kind of does this side by side. Let me see if I can pull up a different one here. The top team, once again, is Alabama, followed by Ohio State and Georgia. The 3 best recruiting teams, right? They're back at it. What do you think of those 3 teams?
I mean, it makes sense. Their composite rankings are high. They have the players to back it. They've consistently shown that they can be there. It makes sense to have them there.
And don't they all have quarterbacks coming back too? Which is another big thing. I think whenever you're looking at these, where are you going with that? And do you have a guy that you can rely on, right? The one that stands out to me kind of goes against that. They have Clemson at number 4. And to me, I know they have the talent on like the defensive side, but you had a quarterback that wasn't reliable last year. You lose your defensive coordinator. I think you have some question marks, right? What's going to happen? Like, what are you going to do? Is he going to just be better this year? Or is he still going to struggle? Or are they going to go with someone else? It's not like you have a Trevor Lawrence coming back, you know, to kind of hype them up. On a plus side, their schedule is so easy that they're probably like, oh, yeah, I guess they're going to be here, right? Self-fulfilling prophecy. They play at Notre Dame, and they play NC State and Wake Forest in the division. The crossover is Miami, which is always hyped up. But like those schools, is NC State going to be able to build off that? Because it feels like every time they're supposed to take the next step, they fall off. Wake Forest seems to kind of be hit or miss. They could fall off. Miami, always hyped up. I'm not buying it until I see it. Right? I've seen some people, like, I think, what's the one guy? The guy that did all the Urban Meyer news, was it McMurphy or something like that? I think he posted that he had Miami in his top 5. And I'm like, you can't base it on Cristobal, right? What has Cristobal even done as a coach? Like,
I don't know.
There's nothing that I'm going to be like, hey, I'm buying in. I'm 100% in. The other team, Notre Dame, they have at 5. And I think that people are undervaluing Brian Kelly, right? Notre Dame, before Brian Kelly got there, was winning at like 50-something%. They had trouble. They had Whittingham. They had Charlie Weiss. Awful, right? So, like, you have these guys that are hyped up, not able to win their games. Recruiting at like a big-time level, to me, doesn't mean anything. I seen it happen with Brady Hoke, right, at Michigan. You come in, you're like, hey, you're recruiting all these guys. Awesome. You get the hype turned up. You win 11 games the first year, and then you just get progressively worse, right, as time goes on. I have a feeling that Notre Dame's kind of going down that path. They're kind of like Clemson, where they have the easier schedule. And it's even easier than Clemson's, let's be honest, because they get to cherry pick who they're playing. And I saw an article against Brian Kelly where Notre Dame fans were saying, like, well, he might just be a little bit overhyped because Notre Dame only had one top 5 win, I think, in his tenure, and maybe 3 or 4 top 10 wins. And I think it was 4. And I think they said that 2 of the 4 ended the season unranked. Like, they beat them early in the year. They were supposed to be top 10. They ended up not even being ranked at all. So Brian Kelly basically had one top 5 year win, which was the Clemson on the COVID year, and then the equivalent of 2 top 10 wins his entire tenure of however many years he's been there. 12? I don't even know how long he'd been there.
And one of the quarterbacks for LSU just declared that they were quitting football altogether. So, I mean, he's already down a quarterback before he even gets a run at LSU.
Well, see, they don't even have LSU ranked. So, they have Notre Dame hyped up without a quarterback, right? They just announced their brand new starting quarterback with a coach that has only coached defense and now an offensive college football. Basically, you need to be an offensive team. No team lives on defense, not even Alabama and Georgia anymore. You have to have a high-powered offense to kind of go along with it. And you're telling me Notre Dame deserves to be in the top 5 with the brand new coach that hasn't won anything? I don't think he's ever been a head coach. I wouldn't be shocked if they're looking at the schedule and saying, oh, yeah, they play Ohio State and Clemson. Their next 2, the other teams that are ranked are USC, which is an unknown, and BYU. USC is only getting hyped because of Lincoln Riley. If you looked at their blue chip ratio when we went over that a few weeks ago, they don't have the talent anywhere near the talent. So Notre Dame might just out-talent them at this point, right?
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe Lincoln Riley is a better coach and they beat him. That will be the one. I mean, it's all the way at the end of the year. But to me, I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame ended the year 8-4 and they lost all those games. Heck, they could lose another one. And then I think they wonder, should we have tried to keep Brian Kelly more? Because you're going from a guy that won 70-something% as a head coach, and you're going to an unknown. I know it wasn't really their situation to kind of push him out, but you had always kind of heard of hey, Notre Dame is not going to try to keep him if he goes to the NFL. They're not going to try to keep him if he wants this. They were kind of trying to get away from him because of his anger or whatever. I don't know. Right? The other team that follows them is A&M, which is kind of the same thing with Jimbo. Comes in, getting all the recruiting classes. When is he putting it together? Right? They beat Alabama, great. Oh, what else did they do? Oh, they're losing to all these other teams, so we won't hear from them. And so it's all right, well, you keep putting them in because of the recruiting in the top 10, but I think some of the people need to look at the coaches, right? Why would you, if it's me, you just watched Baylor go top 5. I really like Aranda. They put them at number 10. Michigan had a similar fall from number 3 to 8. I don't know, is Baylor's quarterback coming back? I know Michigan has their quarterback back, which is something that I look at.
But I think to make some of this balanced out even a little bit, I think they have to give a couple of the other conferences some people within striking distance. It can't just be this overwhelming top heavy thing, or else you run the risk of now it's not just, well, is the SEC getting 2 teams in? Well,
that's what it's at right now. You put A&M up there for no reason. They have Utah there. To me, I don't care if Utah's ahead of Michigan. I wouldn't even care if Baylor was ahead of Michigan and Michigan fall all the way to 10. But you're putting an A&M up there and an Notre Dame up there that have a bunch of unknowns, where Notre Dame's schedule, the way it's set up, they play Ohio State first. if they beat Ohio State, the rest of their schedule is so weak, they're automatically basically in the playoffs, and the ACC could be set up with 2, depending on how that Clemson game goes, right? Notre Dame beats Ohio State, loses to Clemson. What happens? Like, do they both get in? And then you're at the point where if Michigan runs the table in that scenario, who gets the benefit of the doubt? Like, is Michigan going to jump Notre Dame, or are they going to say, well, Notre Dame did beat Ohio State too? Are they better than an undefeated Michigan, like, at that point?
I mean, I think if your logic holds true and Michigan goes undefeated, they're not getting left out.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think you can say the same thing with Notre Dame. If they go undefeated, they're not getting left out. Now, where things get dicey is that when you have, and I'm going to throw 3 teams together. If you have an Arkansas, if you have an Ole Miss, if you have a Texas A&M, that they have early season inflated numbers, and they have them ranked with it to be able to get in that upper ranking. If you're not getting deductions for losing, you're going to just create this ugly scenario where it's like, well, we have all these teams from 1 or 2 conferences just lumped together, and it would come from the expansion with the Big Ten and SEC, where you're just like, okay, we have these 2 schools that now have everyone locked in, and it really and even more, like, you're looking at, does it become just it pigeonholes those 4 spots to those 2 conferences, and now you're screwed. Like, if you lose a game, and it's been like that for a while, where if you lose a game, some conferences you're immediately disqualified. Like the Big 12, you lost a game, you're done.
Well, no, they would have been in last year if Oklahoma State would have won. They were in the position. They were 1 loss, right? I think they were.
They were. I still think it would have been tough. Like, I think they would have deserved it, but I don't know that they.
I think they would have got in over Georgia. I 100% think they would have, and I think it would have changed the playoff on its face, right? Because Georgia was clearly the most talented team last year based on the NFL draft. If they're not in it, Michigan's probably the number 1 seed. They're probably playing Cincinnati. Alabama's probably playing Oklahoma State. Does the Big 12 get a win, or does it just end up being Michigan versus Alabama in the national championship, which Alabama was still going to be injured or whatever ended up happening? So, like, does the Big Ten sneak one by then in that scenario? Like, that Oklahoma State game changed the playoff itself. I don't think 2 SEC teams would have got in, and I don't think they would have left Cincinnati out, because you can't tell Cincinnati and these other conferences that, hey, we don't need to expand the playoffs. You have a chance to get in. Just go undefeated. And then you don't let them in, right? And then remember, Notre Dame was right there too. So, like, I think the Oklahoma State game, if they were able to just punch the ball in from the 1-yard line, I was cheering for that to happen, because I knew there was no way Michigan was getting left out. And I think that you just wouldn't have had 2 teams in. I think they would have at that point, they would have either elevated Notre Dame or they would have put Cincinnati in. And honestly, I wouldn't even have been surprised if they put a Notre Dame-Michigan matchup instead of the Michigan-Cincinnati matchup, just for the TV, right? And they were like, well, that's what the computer numbers told us. They would have pulled something out to kind of validate it, right? And that's kind of what, like, I'm talking about Notre Dame's schedule being weak. That's not just me. Did you see the latest NBC rumors? So NBC's the leading bidder for the Big Ten rights, right? They want to do the prime time. Just to recap, for those that might not have heard, they want to kind of take Sunday Night Football and make it rival ABC's like 8 p.m. game or whatever. They're going to do, like, I think they start their game at 7:30. I don't know. But they want to do it with the Big Ten / Notre Dame, right? So if Notre Dame is playing Clemson or someone big, that's going to be the later game. And then they will let CBS or whatever pick it. And they'll kind of rotate back and forth. Or maybe Fox gets the biggest Big Ten game that week. Who knows? I don't know how the picks are going to be. The contract hasn't come out yet. But in the past, it would be like a rotating between Fox taking the Big Ten game and then ESPN taking one. So 1 week, Michigan might be playing Penn State on ABC. The next week, Nebraska might be playing Ohio State on Fox as the headliner. They want to do that with kind of have Notre Dame as the fallback. And now NBC kind of leaked out that if this happens, Notre Dame got to start scheduling a little bit tougher. And I saw that they singled out Navy, and I was kind of like, ugh. Are they going to force them to get rid of Navy? But they also said that if this happens 100%, Michigan and Notre Dame, who aren't scheduled to play until 2030 or 2033 or something like that, that their game's going to be moved up, which is kind of a bummer because Michigan's supposed to play Oklahoma and Texas, I think, coming up. They're it's a 4-year span where, I mean, this was back when they were in the Big 12, so I'm sure that they'll cancel anyway when they go to the SEC. But like if NBC's telling you like, yo, your schedule's bad, we're not going to pay you close to the money you want, because they had said they were floating around $75 million. It looks like it's going to be lower, like maybe $60 million a year for Notre Dame, and they're telling them you got to schedule tougher. So to hear that NBC's giving them these ultimatums, and then the Notre Dame AD comes out and says like, hey, yeah, Independent's working out great for us. We're getting exactly what we wanted. The Big Ten's going to be a great partner for us. I feel like at this point, they might just be waiting for the ACC rights to be up. I don't see how you can take a lower payout compared to Rutgers. And even Purdue was mentioned. Like they're talking about cutting these other games that Notre Dame plays that aren't bringing in TV ratings and trying to bring back Big Ten matchups, Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They do bring in eyeballs. And if the NBC is going to pay them more, if you're playing 3 plus 4, you'd have USC. So you'd have 4 teams from the Big Ten that you're playing. You're going to get at least 2 of them at home, most likely. So I would think that they would rotate the Michigan and USC games. So every year you're either going to get USC versus Notre Dame and Michigan versus Notre Dame on NBC. And then they're also going to have the fallback of 1 year, maybe whenever they play USC, they get Michigan State 2 at home. And then the next year they get Michigan and Purdue at home. And that's kind of what NBC's telling them to do. And saying like, hey, if you can get out of some of the ACC ones, or even if just drop Navy, maybe Stanford, if it's not bringing in the numbers, we don't care. So I wonder who they're going to drop, because looking at it right now, they play the ACC game, so I'm not going to count them. They play USC, Navy, UNLV, BYU, which isn't a yearly thing, Cal, Marshall, and Ohio State. So basically 2 of them Cal, Marshall. So 2 of them would be replaced with, they probably wouldn't play Ohio State this year. They'd play Michigan and Purdue or something instead of, if they're going to get rid of Navy. I feel like they can keep Navy and get rid of like UNLV, right?
You would think.
Why are you playing UNLV?
Keep it that way.
Yeah. And Marshall. Why are you playing Marshall? And hell, maybe even I don't want an alliance. That's the one thing that kind of scares me. Are the Big Ten going to give them a guaranteed 4-game schedule like the ACC is giving them? I don't think so. And I also don't think, because I hear people saying the Big Ten's going to cave because if not, they'll go to the SEC. Do Notre Dame fans want to play SEC schools? Like, do they not realize you're not going to be playing Alabama every year? Alabama's not going to play you. Either is Georgia. Like, you might get a home and home with them, but they're going to be like, nah, we're going to mix it up. You're going to end up playing what? Vanderbilt? Tennessee? Is that even a good game anymore? Mississippi State, Ole Miss? Like, I don't think those are big draws. I mean, we looked at the TV numbers. Like, they get middling numbers, but maybe better than what they get playing Syracuse or something. But if you're a fan, I don't think those are like must-watch TV. What do you think?
I mean, I kind of lean towards that, but at the same time, it's like Notre Dame's always just like they're on such a high pedestal that people will watch them play UNLV, and they'll pack whatever stadium they play UNLV in. So it's like, yeah, maybe they get that puff rating.
And that's where I want to see how this shakes out. And until the numbers are printed, we don't know. And the Notre Dame one's not up for like 2 or 3 more years, right? So this could all change based on what the Big Ten gets. We don't know what their number is either, because they got 3 networks coming together to pay for a major package. if it ends up being over $100 million a year, is Notre Dame fine getting 60 from NBC and 10 from the ACC or whatever it is? 10 to 12, they said. Like that's like 30 million behind. Maybe the Big Ten doesn't get that much. I don't know. I also keep seeing these puff pieces come out about how maybe the Big Ten will be able to keep up with the SEC now. The Big Ten's been making more money than the SEC this entire time. The schools just haven't been spending it. Like the Big Ten can't make like Illinois pay for better football. I mean, honestly, they tried out of all the schools. Illinois is the one that's hiring Lovie Smith and stuff like that and trying to do stuff. Some of the schools like kind of don't. And so like, unless you're going to increase your pay or whatever, the only thing that I think that they could really do to get around it would be to do some type of uneven revenue sharing, which would kind of defeat the purpose. Like, to be honest, I really don't care if Northwestern or Illinois are good, right? Like the SEC, you can't tell me that Mississippi State, as much as I like Mike Leach, or Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, they don't do anything, man. They're not the big time schools. They're not winning the big time games. They have nothing to do with the SEC success. They don't. It's really only Alabama mixed in with the thing that really helped them is they have had a couple of other schools step up and win championships where the Big Ten has gotten them to the playoffs. They have Michigan State make it. They have Michigan make it. They just haven't won it. Where when Auburn gets there and LSU gets there and Georgia gets there, they've been able to win it. Where if the Big Ten would get Michigan State or Michigan and Penn State to start winning championships, or hell, Nebraska, USC, then I think the SEC dominance would be over. And maybe NIL is the equalizer that they need at this point. But does that mean Notre Dame's going to want to play those other schools? Probably not. Probably not. That's my update for it. Until I see the numbers, for sure. Like you keep hearing that the Big Ten's in a great place. Notre Dame's in a great place now. If Notre Dame starts losing with a new head coach, they're not going to be in a great place, right?
They will be in a bad place.
They'll be in a bad place. That's what I'm looking for. The last thing I had, this is the first time since like 1974 that neither Florida or Florida State are ranked. How do you feel about that?
Not for long. We'll be climbing back in.
Talking about the Gators?
Solid showing. Blow out Duquesne, beat LSU, you're back in the mix.
LSU's not even ranked, though.
It doesn't matter. Beat an SEC school, you're back in it.
That I'm telling you, LSU, if they come out and people aren't respecting Brian Kelly, that win will mean nothing.
He's a playoff participant.
Brian Kelly.
Yes.
I know. Well, that's the other school too. It's like LSU, they need the Florida State game. They need it bad. Because I mean, some of their rankings, you don't know how good these other teams are, but like Mike Leach isn't a pushover. And then you have the rest of the ranked teams from the West where like half the conference on that side is ranked, which is unbelievable. And then do they play anybody? Like you brought up Arkansas. They play Cincinnati, which if Cincinnati beats them, that would be funny, right? But they're not going to get dropped. Then they play BYU, which didn't BYU go through a tear and rip up a bunch of schools last year anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were doing pretty good. I think that's my other thing here. The Big 12 keeps expanding with like BYU. BYU is a sleeper school because they're like Notre Dame light. The only other school, and people are going to attack me for saying this, that might eventually get that big would be Liberty because of their online like alum population, where you're going to get these diehard religious folks to come in and get a following. How far is it going to go? Like Baylor and TCU, like there's been some floating around of like, hey, could we get TCU in the Big Ten? Maybe. If Texas and Texas A&M don't want to come, or Texas Tech maybe, just because of where they are in Dallas. But they're so small, they don't really fit the footprint, right? Only Northwestern's that small in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's making the most money because their schools are gigantic. Like their schools are so big that their alumni are bigger than some of these schools put together.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, why are other games the most watched? I saw someone like the hypotheticals, like maybe Michigan games are the most watched just because their game against Ohio State is so highly watched that it bumps up everyone else's ratings in the Big Ten. And I'm like, one game between Ohio State and Michigan doesn't make it when they average like over 5 million for the rest of their games, guy. Just because people want to watch them play. What are you talking about? Because the Iron Bowl gets that big bump. Like, why wouldn't it bump up the rest of the SEC then? I mean, not every year, but there have been years where they have been, but then the rest of the rankings or ratings kind of just fall back to like the Big Ten or whatever. It's the same reason why a bunch of the big stadiums are there. Yeah, the SEC can compete, but it's really only those two conferences that can. Even Notre Dame's stadium's not that big compared to the big boys, right? I mean, Tennessee, my heart goes out to them. I'm surprised they haven't started to take seats away. Why are you laughing? That's a real legit thing. Like, do they start tarping them over? People are still paying to see that. Maybe one time they come around. I mean, they're throwing the money at the NILs, but it has to piss them off that, like, of all the teams I've mentioned, like recently, like Auburn's and the Alabamas, they're kind of like, it'd be like Wisconsin, like the Big Ten. Wisconsin could win a championship or whatever if they got their shit together. It seems like they always lose the one game in outrageous fashion, like they get killed or something. It's like, what are you doing? Tennessee's like the same, but
see that'd be a crazy idea. Just start, if you lose seats. Oh, I beat you. You lose 5 seats. You just progressively just lose your seats to you can't. No one gets to watch you at home.
Hey, remember whenever they were giving away student tickets in Michigan? I invited you. You missed a hell of an opportunity, Matt. Could have been there in the student section. Now it's like sold out city, man. Can't get a ticket. Yeah, you should have came to see a game with me. Might not have been a win for the good guys, but you could have been there. You have anything else you have for college football?
No.
I honestly, there's no surprises in this poll. That, like, other than like not Notre Dame, but NC State's up there. The Big 12, like you said, is someone going to get a bump? Or are they going to beat each other up and just stay in the teens? Pitt's the other one. It's like they've been kind of getting respect, but the polls have them at a Wisconsin level. And honestly, that kind of makes sense. You know, Wisconsin gets there. Can they win the big bowl game? Like Pitt didn't get it done last year, even though Pickett was out or whatever. Maybe they win it if he plays, but then just get him to play. I don't know. They're kind of like the Wisconsin of the ACC. I saw like a list of like the top players, and Pittsburgh had a bunch of them on it, which was surprising compared to like Clemson of like the past 10 years or whatever. It was like Clemson, Florida State was mixed in, and Pitt. And I'm like, really? This is the ACC's best to offer? Pitt is mixed in with Clemson and Florida State guys? But it makes sense, man. Narduzzi has a good program there.
That's right.
Man, Penn State's not ranked. Oh, I was going to do the over-unders real quick. So Alabama's at 10.5. I would stay away from that. Michigan's at 9.5. Their regular or their non-conference is so bad that I think I would take the over. Michigan State's also at a 7.5. And depending on how you feel about Mel Tucker, I think you also have to hammer the over for that. Right? Penn State's at an 8.5. I was going to say over, but then I saw that Franklin has like 3, 7, and 6 seasons under his belt at Penn State, which is surprising to me because of those other, like the 3 big years he had.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what to think of that one. Pitt's at 8.5. Would you go over or under? You're more the ACC guy.
I think Pitt could do it. I think it's just there's a lot of unknowns with them that would leave me hesitant. I think you'd be better off playing it safe and taking the under with them, just because if they don't have the consistent quarterback play, they've shown that they really do struggle. I mean, on the flip side, when they do have it, they have seasons like they did last year. They flat out won the ACC.
Yeah, that's where you don't know. I think that's pretty spot on for them. Nebraska's at 7.5. Nothing in my gut says that they will hit the over. Right? Like, you can't just be bad for how many years and then one day you're like, you know what? We're not bad anymore, boys. Let's go. Nebraska, 8 wins. Like, I think that there has to be more to it than that. Same with, like, they have Baylor at 7.5. I feel like they've been winning too much where that should be the over. And then the last one I'll point out, Matt, just for you, Florida State 6.5. You going the under?
Oh, take the over. That's money in the bank.
You think they'll get at least bowl eligible?
I'm bowl eligible or bust.
I accidentally clicked on the Florida State one in my Twitter timeline. I'm pretty sure I got brain damage reading all the predictions of 12-0 for Florida State. And I was like, do they not think that Norvell's going to get fired now? So I was very confused on their take of the season, Matt. So if they rip through Duquesne and LSU, then you can make fun of me. But I don't know what to think of them right now.
I don't think anyone knows what to make of them. But
that's all I have for the final bell. You have anything else?
Nope. Check out southboundsports.com.
All right. We'll be getting ready for the main season coming up with some upcoming changes and stuff. So check that out, and we'll see you next week.